Arganissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.arganissima.com. Arganissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
Folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, with your host, Hurricane H. New day, new show, new topic, new guest. And today's topic is going to affect everyone. If you're watching and listening, it is for you. It's going to help you. And you probably have experienced something that we're going to be discussing today with our guest. And, we all know the power of the mind, and it's all in the mind. And today we're going to talk about mindfulness and transformational thinking. With me today, author, keynote speaker, international keynote speaker, coach, also the founder and president of the Institute of Transformational Thinking, Aura Nadrich. Aura, welcome to the show.
Hi, Hurricane. Thank you so much for having me.
It is my pleasure and honor. And I am so excited about this topic because this affects everybody. I'm a person that loves positivity and loves to work with the mind, and it's all about the mind. I mean, whatever you tell your mind, it happens, it manifests somehow. And the power of the mind is just we don't understand it well enough. And it is funny because a couple of shows I've had so far, that they've talked about this topic, and so this is really in line with a lot of the things that we've been talking about on the radio here in the station. And so one thing that we start with usually is your story, how you got into this. I mean, you have a bunch of books, you help people, you do a lot of stuff, but somehow, somewhere you started your path and it got you to this. We can talk about that first, and then let's dive into the mindfulness and the power of the mind.
Great. Yes. So, I've been writing for a very long time. I really started writing when I was even a little girl. I used to write poetry and short stories, and, it was something that was very natural for me. But I went in a whole different direction. I actually was an actress for 10 years. And while I was an actress, I sold a screenplay. It was an original screenplay. And I was just amazed that it was bought by a major studio and it was going to be turned into a movie. And so writing was always a part of my life. And it wasn't really until I had a very horrible experience with a family member of mine that had a mental breakdown. And it really just turned my world upside down. This was an older sister of mine who was the most exquisite human being. I mean, beautiful inside and out, just a radiant soul, And she had a mental breakdown and was never the same again after that. And it was devastating. And it was devastating for me, the whole family. I was the youngest of four, and I took it hard. It was really very hard for me to accept that my beautiful, amazing, special sister was never going to be the same person again. So I really got affected by that profoundly. And what happened is that I started to experience deep anxiety from what had happened to her. And it took me on a very deep psychospiritual journey because I was suffering and I didn't know why. And I started to go into many different modalities of therapies, and it took me everywhere from cognitive behavioral therapy to just everything from meditation, everything I could find. And it was an incredible journey of awakening for me. I suddenly found myself on a journey of finding out so much about the workings of the mind. It really wasn't until I went into Jungian analysis, which was founded by Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, that I was able to really come to terms with my anxiety. It impeded my career, actually. I had suffered from such deep anxiety, not knowing why, that's what took me on this journey. And what I realized when I went into that deep dive of psychoanalysis, that I was living in fear. And I didn't know what was behind the fear. It was just this very low grade feeling of anxiousness without knowing why. And what I was able to discover in my journey of this self inquiry was that I was afraid that I was going to have a breakdown like my sister. And the reason for that is it wasn't based in anything real. It was based solely on fear. And the fear came from, well, how could she have been perfectly normal one day and then she was never the same again? Well, if that can happen to her, that can happen to me. What I didn't realize is that when we go into fight or flight, we oftentimes can feel very threatened in our survival. So I told myself something that was completely based in fear. And when I was able to come face to face with the very thing that was causing me this much terror, I realized that that wasn't even true. So it would help me really overcome this fear that had gripped my life, help me transform that fear into something very positive and something that I could work with so that I could continue on my life journey in a very positive way. And it was a huge breakthrough for me. Once that happened, I knew that I was committed to the wellness field and that I wanted to help others suffer less. I didn't want other people to go through what I'd gone through, which took such a long time for me to come to realize that what had happened to my sister was her destiny. It wasn't my destiny. And what I have come here to fulfill is solely meant for me. And what she was having to go through in her lifetime was meant for her. So I wrote my first book, Says Who, How One Simple Question Can Change the Way You Think Forever, which was a cognitive method that I created for transforming negative and fear-based thoughts. And it was a really huge breakthrough book for me, having written it, and it really was received quite well. So I knew that was it. I was on the path of wellness.
Wow, what an amazing story. I mean, there's some sadness in there, in terms of the experience itself, but just the outcome of all of it and where you are today. And first of all, I'm very, it's a pleasure to know that the fact that you were an actress in the past and you had also written your own scenario and script rather and gave it to a major studio. And I'm assuming they did work with it. I hope that they did. And that's actually a big deal. I mean, it's not easy to put these things together. I mean, it's a lot more intense work and you have to think almost of every scenario and whatever the story has to be very compelling. And that's big work. And then you had, this personal tragedy, I would call it, for what it's worth. I mean, it is a tragedy. I mean, someone that you're close to going through that, it's not easy to actually deal with. And you're human, we're all human, we all go through things and we deal with them differently. And again, it was a tough one, and but you did try to find ways to actually overcome. And by going through that discovery journey, you discovered, your way and your mission, and your actual contribution in this world and your path is wellness. And you did, and then you started to write books. Now, first of all, I'm impressed because I see a lot of books. I'm assuming one of those is out there behind you.
Yes, they are.
And so that the first question, I mean, says who? I love that question. I mean, many things many times we hear people say things and, well, says who? Why does it have to be that way? Right. And, asking always one question can lead to multiple questions. And eventually you can, if you can find the answers, you probably can have an outcome that is better than when you don't ask the questions and you just kind of like in the dark. And that's a big, piece. But so that leads me to the question, and we'll talk about the book. And then I know that's not the only book. You have a new release book, which we'll talk about as well. But the idea is you're into this journey, you discovered all this wellness and you decided you want to help the people, the world, and share your experience and hopefully help them not fall into it and identify their own way and destiny. And you're doing that. You've been doing it for a minute now. I mean, more than a minute. But the idea is the mind, right? You discovered the mind, how you turn things in your mind can make a difference. You could have easily collapsed and followed the exact path and maybe had, whatever outcome that would not be a happy outcome, maybe, right? However, you decided to discover a different way and switch that mindset. You are actually, you created the Institute of Transformational Thinking. And that's the thing. It's all about how we think. If we think positive, we act positive. If we think negative, we act negative. And everything else that follows, it's either one or the other. If we say, like, I always give these nice little memes and motivational quotes and stuff. And you know what? Believe in yourself, believe in things, say I can do. The more you say these things, it becomes affirmation, it becomes real, and you manifest, and then you see the fruits. And if you do the opposite, or you hear negativity all the time, you're going to get exactly in the negative. This topic itself, I just love it. I mean, I live by it. I choose positivity every day. As much as, believe me, we're all surrounded by things that can really impact us negatively, but it's how you choose to act with it and how you choose to behave around it, and what you do to make that happen is the difference. So take us through that journey. Like, you obviously devised a system that helped you, and now that you're helping people with. How does that work?
Well, it really goes back to the first book, Says Who, How One Simple Question Can Change the Way You Think Forever. Because what I realized, it's really everything that you said. The mind is extremely powerful. We think between 40 and 70,000 thoughts a day, which is really hard, no pun intended, to wrap our mind around how much mental activity is going on in this mind of ours. So a lot of the thoughts that get our attention are oftentimes the more negative and fear-based thoughts. Those are the ones that really get our attention and we focus on. And sometimes we focus on them to the point where we can obsess on them and they can start to take over our life. So when I went into really understanding the way the mind works and to really take a deep dive into the type of thinking patterns that we have, I realized that it really starts with our thoughts. Everything really stems from that. And what I also realize is that so many people don't even think to question their thoughts. They just accept them. It's like somebody's telling them how to think. And it couldn't be farther from the truth. With Says Who, I created 7 questions. They're very cognitive, meaning you can really connect the logic of your thoughts to the reasons why you're having them. So by questioning the thoughts that you have, you're actually challenging them. You're making your thoughts work for you. You're not supposed to work for your thoughts. Your thoughts, it's the other way around. They're supposed to serve your well-being. So I realized, Hurricane, that with these skill sets and with these disciplines and with these different modalities, we can actually train our mind. We can shape our mind. We can discipline our mind. We can really do so much with our mind so that it can really help serve us in a positive way on the life journey. We just have to learn these techniques and these skill sets to be able to work with them. I'm very intrigued and very fascinated by the way the mind works, and I think that when we have this type of information, we have a choice every minute of the day to decide whether we want to hold on to a thought and believe that it is real and true, or we can challenge it and we can realize that it's not working in our best favor, and we have the ability and the power to change our thoughts. That's extraordinary.
It is. And actually, it's so extraordinary and it's so real that we have true results all over us in this world. However, the majority of people are still not looking at that. They're still, to your point, taking that one thought, one experience, and they dwell on that. They just kind of like make it like it's a snowball effect. It's like it's a stunning thing, and you just keep escalating your brains, and it gets becoming overwhelming. And then all of a sudden, you just think that's the world you live in. No more. You can't get out of it. Many people make that mistake, and and everybody goes through tragedy and hardship in life, and hurdles and obstacles at work, in family. It doesn't matter. We all experience it. But again, some of us get off quick, or just can dismiss them because they take that thinking process and they say, no, I'm not holding to this. It's over, out. And you just kind of like open up and you're mindful to everything else. And some people, they just kind of like got stuck into that concept, and then it's hard for them to come out. As a matter of fact, one of the things that one of the missions of what we do, what I do here on this platform, is to help people get the resources and keep them motivated and change for the better. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, my motto is time to evolve. We need to evolve. You know, we need to kind of deep dive into our brains and our mindful and our there's our energy, our spirituality. I mean, there's so many things that we can dive in and that can help us, and all that stuff can make or break you. And and everybody is capable. That's the other part. It's not like this is only for one, the few, or the elite. It's for everyone. Anybody has that ability to do it, but they have to discover that they are at that point, and they have to. And even if they're not going through challenges, they should still be able to see, like, I want to live a better life. Okay, well, so let's think happy about it. Let's see how we're gonna do this. How is it easy? No, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be different things, but I got to keep my mind positive and focused on all those things. I mean, I can give you a good thing that happened. Well, it's an example that happened to me. And now I've been in sales almost all my life. I was a tour guide. I do, speeches and seminars and I do presentations all the time. And now I do this. But believe it or not, I mean, we all heard, I mean, you were an actress and you know that there's the stage fright, and there's that called the anxiety and all this stuff. Many people have that moment before you get into a scene or whatever. It's kind of like you get that. And the way I got over all that stuff is that I almost blank out, before. I don't think about anything. I think about everything else that is positive, but not what I'm going to be doing until I'm there. And then I just go for it. The minute I start thinking about it, everything goes blank. I mean, it's like you're just going to shut down. It's becoming, and then you get nervous and you stutter, and your breathing gets harder. And it's amazing how it shifts, how you can just test yourself doing this. And many people would have that. Most people are afraid to stand in front of a crowd or a group, or even speak, or whether it's work, whatever. People shy away in a classroom, they shy away in a boardroom, they shy away in a meeting, because they don't want to be that spotlight. And that's just an example, but you can, and the only way to get rid of that is to stand and just do it. That's one. That means you have to be aware that you're gonna do it, and you know what? Hell with it. Some you might say something, whatever, but you're gonna do it the first time wrong. The second time you're gonna do better, and ultimately you're gonna be the best. And you keep doing that. And that's just one example for me that one thought that comes to my mind, and it can destroy what I'm going to be doing. As a matter of fact, sometimes you go into you can hear something before a discussion, and it kind of ruins your next step. Because that's all you're going to hear, and your mind is just going to be whispering to you, and you're going to hear that blah, blah, blah. And it's affecting the way you think. So for example, that's my technique. I just kind of like shut down everything, think about one good place, happy place, or some good thought, and then that's what I dwell on. And also, like, I'm gonna do this. I have no choice. This is happening. So I build that confidence, and I'm able to do this. And again, it's all mind shifting. I mean, I can literally just like, oh, this is it. This is horrible. I can't do this, or I can do this. Mm-hmm. It's just literally it's that transfer from one side to the other. Right. Everyone can do it. Now, you said something about those 7 questions that are all linked. Yes. It starts with says who, right?
Right. That's the first question.
And would you be able to share with us the other, steps?
Yeah, the first question is really the very first step that we take to really acknowledge the thought that we're having and want to really do an inquiry. Like, why am I thinking this thought, rather than just accepting it? Because we accept so many of our negative and fear-based thoughts. Oh, we're thinking it, so we have to accept it. That's, again, not true. That's just, a belief in something that somehow our mind controls us, which I, again, challenge that. That is not true. And the first question being says who, and I like the way you say it. I have an online course called the Says Who certification, the Thought Coach certification training program based on the Says Who method. I came up with a niche of coaching called Thought Coaches, because as a life coach for 10 years, I realized what I was really doing was I was a thought coach. I was helping people really transform their negative and fear-based thoughts. Says who is the first question, which basically is saying, who is saying this thought in my mind? Mm-hmm. Well, I am. It's taking responsibility for the thought that you're having. So here you are really looking at this thought, being very directly acknowledging of it, rather than trying to deflect it or bury it or pretend you're not having it. And when you acknowledge that by the question of says who is saying this thought in my mind, I am. You're then taking that first step to then want to really understand whether or not this thought is true or it's not. Do you know? Because if you're going to go ahead and believe a thought that you're having, then you really need to decide if it's actually based in truth. Is it a thought that is helping you? Is it a thought that is serving your well-being? So some of the says are says who? You know, who is saying this thought in my mind? You would answer, I am. The second question being, have I heard someone say this thought before? A lot of the thoughts that we have do not originate with us. We heard it said by someone else. And it could have been said as early as childhood. Somebody, an authority figure, a parent, a teacher, a bully on the schoolyard, somebody said something to us and we went, oh, okay, you know, you're not smart enough. You're not this enough. You're not that enough. You're never going to be this. You're never going to be that. When you're young and you're impressionable and someone says something like that to you, your first response is usually, oh, okay. Well, if they're telling me this about myself, then it must be true, especially if it's somebody who is an authority figure. And it could even be somebody who's a bully for a child on the schoolyard that's intimidating them and they're telling them something about themselves, but they know that it's not true, but they go ahead and they believe it. The third question is, do I like this thought? I mean, think about all the thoughts that we have that we don't even like. Okay, so why do we go ahead and entertain holding on to a thought that we don't even like and that we believe is true and we accept it as true? Do you know? The fourth question is, does this thought work for me? Do you know? How does a thought that is negative or critical or self-deprecating, how does that work for you favorably? If the answer is no, it doesn't work for me, then why do you allow yourself to accept a thought that doesn't work for you? Do you know? The sixth question is, you know, do I feel that this thought has control over me? Do you know? And oftentimes you do. You do feel that this negative or fear-based thought has some type of control over you. And in fact, you're allowing yourself to be controlled by that thought. It's not like it's holding you hostage. It's not like it's holding you prisoner. You know, we are the prisoners. We're the ones that are holding ourselves hostage by believing a thought that has some kind of, we believe has some kind of control over us, when in fact, we can change it like that. And the seventh final question is, am I ready to let this thought go? You know, some people are not ready to let the thought go because they're so attached to it, or they're so used to it, or they're so familiar with it, you know. But if you're really ready to start to let those thoughts go that don't work for you favorably, that don't make you feel better, that do feel like they control you, that maybe you took on, that somebody else told you about yourself, but it's not true. If you finally get to the point where you say, you know what, I've had enough of this thought. There's nothing that is contributing positively to my life. So therefore, I can choose right now to say that, yeah, you know what, I am really ready to let this thought go once and for all. And you make that decision to let that thought go. Now, someone might say to me, yeah, but what if that thought comes back? I have a great technique also, in addition to the 7 questions, which is the release and replace technique. The release and replace technique, I've done it. I did it once in front of 150 entrepreneurs. Okay. I literally give them a Post-it. It's called the release and replace technique. And I say to my group, my audience, the people that are taking my workshop, I want you to write down a negative thought that you have. It could be a thought that just pops up into your mind right now. It could be a thought that's been with you for the last 20 years. It could be a thought that came into your head as you were taking a shower this morning. Just write down a negative thought. Now, a lot of people will say to me, oh, can I write down more than one? Does it have to just be one thought? Because we all know we have more than one negative thought. Okay. I said, let's start with one. Write down one negative thought. I see everybody writing down on this Post-it, like, oh, you could see the emotional effect that this thought has on them, on their faces. I say, great. I said, I want you to take that piece of paper and I want you to crumple it up. I see them, they're crumpling up the piece of paper like they can't stand it, you know? And I say, okay, now I want you to throw that paper across the room. I was once on a stage and all these balls of paper was coming at me, and like when you saw the fervor of people like throwing that piece of paper as far as they could across the room, I said, great. There are all these little balls of crumpled up paper on the ground. I said, do you want to pick that? Do you want to pick up a piece of paper, uncrumple it, and put that thought back in your head? And they're like, no, a resounding no. And then I say, okay, now I want you to write down its positive counterpart. And you could see their faces like just changing in front of me, like from like this, so glad to get rid of that thought, to like a sigh of relief, like, okay, now I can write down something nice, something forgiving, something loving, something inspiring, and they write that down. And I say, okay, do you want to crumple that up? Do you want to crumple it in a ball and throw it across the room? And they're like, no, I don't. I say, yeah, why don't you take that and why don't you stick it on your mirror so you can look at what you replace that negative thought that was so undermining, that was so sabotaging, that was so negative, that made you not feel good about yourself, and look at what you replaced it with. And let that be a reminder of how easy it is for us to replace our thoughts. You just got to do it, And it's a real crowd pleaser, that exercise. People really respond to it well.
I felt like doing it with you right now. As a matter of fact, I think people watching and listening right now, I love this. This is an exercise that everybody can do right now. I mean, just listening to the show, watching it, just do it. I mean, try it. I know it works. I mean, you were saying it. I was already doing the action. That's why I figured that we're going to throw that thing. And, but it works. You're right. It's about just getting rid of those things. And by the way, you talked about, it's all there. Those questions, they're like basically self-analysis. I mean, you're just doing your own self-assessment. And once you start asking the questions, you have the answers. It's just a matter of, you don't ask the questions. That's why you don't know the answers. But as soon as you start pulling those questions, like, why am I doing this? What's going on? I can do this. I don't want this. And you will know that you got the answers. It's no, I don't want this is over.
Right.
But get to the point where people are aware enough to ask the questions, to start, is I think the challenging part.
That's right.
And Aura, you mentioned something about a thought that may have been given to you when you were a child or any other, at work, whatever. That subconsciousness is always available, and subconsciousness is powerful. I mean, hypnosis is mostly worked into that level. And when you throw in something in subconscious, it stays there. It's there. And it manifests whenever there is a trigger. And as soon as that trigger is there, it comes back and it affects you unless you know how to get out of that. I mean, like, you don't need to snap out of it.
Yes.
But most of us basically are, I refer to the word zombies because we get those things and we operate under the same condition.
Good word. It's a pretty good word, especially these days. Yeah. I mean, we are on automatic. We're walking around just doing and going and being, and we're not even having a sense. That's what mindfulness is all about. Mindfulness is being in the present moment with total awareness. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What's going on? What am I seeing? What am I registering? What am I picking up? We got to really connect to ourselves and our environment and the world. We got to really be awake to know what's going on. And that's the beauty of mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of being present with awareness, not like doing 20 things at once or being distracted or not really seeing. There's a great quote by philosopher Thoreau. It's not what you look at that matters. It's what you see.
Powerful. Well, it is true. I mean, you and I can see the same thing. I mean, we can be looking at the same thing, and you see one thing, and I see, and it happens all the time with art. It happens with everything.
Yes,
I mean, psychology, they use that too. I mean, they give you those cards, and they say, "What do you see?" And everybody gives them a different answer.
Totally. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, even in my new book, Mindfulness and Mysticism, when I talk about a mystical experience, I use something like a sunset or a sunrise, which can be incredibly exquisite and magical and even mystical. You may look at a sunset and see it one way. I look at a sunset and see it another way, and a sunrise. For somebody, they can be like, oh, yeah, that's great. We have sunrises and sunsets every day. What's the big deal? You and I can look at it and go, whoa, wow, and it can ignite all sorts of things, in our imagination and in our psyches, powerful stuff.
Yeah, I'm laughing because it reminded me of something. I used to teach real estate train like courses. This probably is going to sound off, but it's not. So in the course we talk about. I like to make things physical, like to give them a visual. And some of the agents, they do this mistake. They walk into somebody like to show a house, right? And they all walk by all the amenities in that property, and they just kind of like go like just brush through it. So I used to teach them, like, if you want these people to really get attached to this space, you gotta, point out, what the kitchen is and how, they can manifest in that kitchen, what they can be doing in that kitchen, what they're gonna be doing in that fireplace, what they're gonna be doing in that room, whatever it is. Imagine things, you create the imagination. So you start visualizing you in that home. And it's funny. Everybody, once you do that, like you and I would be looking at the same thing, but I'm thinking about, a party. You might be thinking about, I don't know, some sort of, a nice little set-in with friends, and what it could be anything. But it's just the scenario that changes based on your imagination. But if I don't trigger that, it's not happening. Because I've seen people that walk in, they're like, again, they're just, okay, everybody knows what a room looks like. Everyone knows what the kitchen, looks like. But it's what you can start the imagination there and get them triggered to like really live it before they even get in. They start getting, it's just, again, it's just about the visual. And this whole thing is about bringing that into your, in front of you, almost projecting it.
Yeah. Exactly right. Bringing it into the foreground of your mind so you can be able to really see something. And like you said, use your imagination and start to see how that ignites your senses. Then you start to feel I talk about the chemicals in the brain and mindfulness and mysticism. The very thing you just described, Hurricane, that ignites the neurotransmitters in your mind. And you start to imagine. And when we start to imagine, we start to really fire up those neurons. And then we ignite the chemicals in our brain, and that's when the serotonin, the dopamine, and the endorphins start to really excite us, and we have that ability to turn that on if we want to.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I think everybody wants to. They just either not aware or they're not sure that they can do it. Because I don't think anyone out there wants to feel miserable or feel off or feel this. I think everybody, if you talk to them like, I feel bad, I'm not doing good, deep inside, they want to be out of it. They just don't know what to do to make, to get out of it. And that's, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes they don't have the support. And again, also personalities can vary. Some people are stronger than others. They have better resilience and they can do, things, deal with trauma and, tragedy a little strong, better than others. But that doesn't mean that those other folks are completely off this grid and they cannot have, this solution. It's available. I mean, this show would probably resonate with a lot of people, and hopefully it can help plenty. And you talked about something about, we talked about imagination and give the example, but even success, right? You imagine when you write a movie or a script, right? You can visualize the whole thing. I mean, you're writing, you actually can see the scenes as you write them. You can see what the dialogue is. You are as a success, person that wants to be in a position, or a business person that started a business. Like the other day, I had an interview that I was interviewed, and they asked me like, where do you see yourself? Like, I see myself as a network, as a CNN and bigger. I see myself on the podium doing, a 10-year anniversary, and here we go. The network is growing. I already visualized that moment. I already visualized the speech. The crowd, how the event's going to look like. That keeps me motivated and keeps me going. And it's true. This is how I operate, and everything. I set up the goal and I visualize the goal. I actually have a picture of my house and my car in my phone. I got to keep working for those things. It keeps me motivated, and because if I don't, it's just gonna, impede on me, and I'm like, oh my God, collapse. Now I don't feel like nobody can stop me except me. And I think, that's the problem. We are our worst enemy, as we kind of push ourselves, or almost collapse ourselves sometimes, because we use the ostrich effect. We just dump our head in the ground, and hopefully it's going to go. It's going to just, move on. It doesn't move unless you actually face it hands on and face on, and boom.
Right, exactly. And I talk about that in mindfulness and mysticism. What you just described for yourself is that we don't have to live ordinary lives. That doesn't mean you have to do something, extraordinary per se, that makes you feel that it's hard to obtain. But you have to think of yourself as somebody who can manifest things that are even beyond your wildest dreams. You just have to believe that it's possible. And again, that goes back to the thinking mind. What thoughts do you want to hold in your mind's eye? I say you can curate. I use the word curate. Like, what type of thoughts do you want to curate? As if you were showing a beautiful exhibit in a museum. When we go to look into a museum and see a fine artist, it's curated. The finest work of that artist is shown in the museum. Well, the same can be said for our brains, our minds. Why not curate the type of thoughts you just described? Really seeing a scenario for yourself that's very positive and very imaginative. That's what I talk about. And when I mention that in mindfulness and mysticism, I say that's when you can really feel the magic. Again, you're kicking in those chemicals in the brain. And I believe that we can manifest whatever we want.
We can. And again, the power of the mind is just unbelievable. People do some incredible things. And, you probably read the quote that says impossible. The word itself says I am possible. I mean, just that in itself, is one of my go-to, so that's the other thing. I use these anchors, like, every now and then I have these little, quotes and things that keep me motivated. So I always kind of revert back. No excuses, no pain, no gain, I mean, I throw these are things that we all know. Everybody, there's nobody that exists today. And I don't care what language you speak, what culture, you have the similar expression that actually, repeats that, or at least means that. But we have to help ourselves this way, and also find resources to help us do that, such as yourself, read books that do this. There's plenty of positive out there. And you know what? I think the positivity would probably outweigh the actual negativity in the world, but we're just not, kind of flowing that way. That's the problem, because again, you watch news and I would say no news is good news, literally. And, I'm not putting that we don't need the news, because we do need to know what's going on in the world. But there's a moment where you got to stop watching when it's just, redundant. It's the same.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't advise, getting all your information from the news. I think
Well, we can talk about that.
The news can be very negative, and the news can be, very
manipulative
and very auto-hypnotic, and everybody's got their own particular news that they draw their information from. Mm-hmm. And be open-minded. This is a time to be much more open-minded and get information from different sources so that it feeds your positivity. Again, if you're really going down the same rabbit hole over and over and over again and only getting information from there, then it's just going to really stay the same, And what I really subscribe to is expanding your awareness and allowing yourself to be expansive in the way you look at things, so that you can really come to know a lot more than being more limited in the way you want to perceive things.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm listening to you, and I just have this quick, thought in my mind. When you in social media today, I don't care what platform you go to. If you just Google one thing, that's all you see. So if you pick one thing, that's all that's popping up. You go on TikTok and you just look at one for like 20 seconds. The only thing that you're going to get in your feed is that same thing.
Exactly.
The algorithm that works there works also for us.
It's so well said, Hurricane. It's important to bring that up, because we have to really be mindful of that. We have to be smarter than that. And a lot of the work that I do around transformational thinking is really about heightening our awareness, which also really makes us more intelligent people. And when I say intelligent, I mean that you just really begin to understand the way things work, and that you really can understand how to draw your own conclusions and use your mind wisely.
Well, I'm totally with you. As you can see, I'm vibing well with that. But I think some of the issues are, some folks, they are either, again, we talked about fear. Fear is a big factor, and the challenge with fear is that it just kind of inhibits everything else. That's the thing. Panic and fear can be detrimental to your health and life sometimes, because that's what we say. Don't panic in a disaster, or God forbid, in a situation, because you don't know how you think. Your think process is gone out the window, and you're just like, oh my God, you're spinning. You cannot be in that mode. That's the thing. You mentioned, a fight or flight, kind of concept. It is very big, and we all operate in those circumstances, at all times. And you talked about mindfulness. and having like, be aware of things. I mean, I have a background in martial arts, and one of the things that we all learn, since the beginning, I mean, I've done it for 40 years, is you have to be like, literally, if I'm in a place, I literally visualize everybody around me. I can see who is going to be a tough cookie, who's not going to be, who can be dangerous, who's not going to be dangerous. I mean, I have a joke with my best friend. He's got a big family and they're all big dudes. So I sat down with, one time I was with them in the party, and I'm sitting, I'm just looking left and right, like, what happens now if I get caught up with all these people? Who do I start with? And as I'm visualizing, so I told him, we started cracking up. It's like, you're aware. I mean, I'm in a situation. How do I handle myself in this situation? Now, this was a joke, but in reality, you go to a place, it's funny. In movies, they say, find your exit, right? They prepare you that if in case of fire or something, a hazard, you need to know how to. So, but most of us, they would go, they wouldn't even know where's the nearest exit, where's the nearest this, because we're not paying attention. And that's a different mindset. You just have to be aware. You see.
That's why heightening our awareness is so powerful, and that's why mindfulness work is very powerful, because it heightens your awareness, which heightens your consciousness, and you really are like this, warrior, and you can really function. If you have martial arts background, you understand the discipline of the mind. When you have that disciplined mind and you can function with equanimity and non-reactivity, because the beauty of mindfulness is that you really are functioning like this warrior or samurai, and that you can really navigate the moments of your life. Like, I almost think of it like Tai Chi. You're really you're kind of moving into the movement rather than fighting it or resisting it. And there's a lot of ways to make our minds more agile, so that we really can move through situations, even the most difficult of situations, with a very precise and clear thinking mind. This is why this work is so important, so that you can really clear your mind and use it as a very powerful instrument for good, for things that are positive.
Oh, I know. And, it's funny because people are aware, and in the same way that aware that they're in a negative, they just have to be aware that they can be in a positive. They by choice, they actually sometimes get stuck. It's not that they don't want to, they almost make that decision. I'm stuck in this, because to your point, all they have to do is kind of take that and throw it away. But somehow they're not taking it out, because it kind of maybe serves a purpose sometimes, because like by doing that, by collapsing, I'm maybe kind of deferring facing the reality of things. Mm-hmm. And that's a big problem, because again, facing your reality is always, a tough choice.
Yeah. But you have to be willing to look at that, really the power of self-reflection. I really do think of it as somebody who's willing to do the inner work and not be afraid to do the inner work, and have self-awareness. You really are a warrior. You really are someone who's not afraid to look at things. You're not afraid to know yourself. And that means all aspects of yourself. We have many contradictions to who we are. And, not to know yourself, or not to take a deep dive in the inner journey, I think is a lot of people that are afraid to do that. They don't really want to fully know themselves. But I think it's great to really know yourself, because you can come to know yourself better than anybody else can. And it will serve you well on the life journey, because when you know who you are, you'll be able to handle any situation that you're in masterfully.
Well, you said it, it's amazing how it's like, what do you go? You said Tai Chi, right? And you're right. I mean, in the world of martial arts, we use elements, water, wind, and every one of those calls for a different tactic or technique, right? So water, wind, you go with the flow, you get, you have to be softer, you're going to be rock and earth, which is stronger. There's different techniques, same thing in real life. I mean, sometimes you have to choose to be diplomatic. Sometimes you can be blunt. Sometimes you have to choose your battle carefully, as they say. You don't just pick the right battle. But understanding those dynamics makes you agile, makes you able to do things. But again, we need to make people aware that they can. And you said it perfectly. You have the control to turn your body, to your person, to a different. And there's nobody better that knows you than you. know, and you can really put that. And it's inside. It's not like And the other part. I mean, some people may have difficulty, but there's resources. Mm-hmm. Again, surround yourself with with the right crowd. That's the first thing you can start. I mean, if you surround yourself with everybody that's going to give you just a doom, world is ending kind of concept, well, that's all you're going to be thinking about. It's the end of the world.
Right.
If you surround yourself with like the world is beautiful, we're going to Mars, you might think that you're going to Mars,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
and that happens all the time. You talked about the news, and depends what channel you watch, you're going to be swayed one way or the other.
Right. Right. And not to just be stuck in that loop of negativity, or fear mongering. You want to be very mindful of the information that you're taking in. Remember, it's penetrating you. You're the one that can decide what you want to receive. That's, again, it brings up the power of who we are. Rather than to relinquish our power and allow for other things to sort of take control over us. Even something like what I said about our own thinking mind. There's so many people that just feel that they can't even control their own thoughts. Let's start with that. The fact that you really can choose and pick and decide which thoughts work for you favorably and which thoughts don't. It's a pretty amazing ability that we have, that we can make those decisions for ourselves, that we can have agency over ourselves to say, no, that thought does not work for me. You know what? That thought works better for me. I'm going to bring that into my mind, and I'm going to really develop my thoughts from that and see what grows from that, which, again, going back to what you were saying about what you envision for yourself, we build on that, and we grow on the imagination, and we grow on the creative impulses that we have. That, I say a vision starts with a single thought. You have a single thought and imagine what's been grown from that. That's how inventions are done. That's how we have airplanes. That's how we have modern medicine. That's how we have all the extraordinary things that we have created, and people that have created inventions and did great contributions to humanity. It started with a single thought, an idea. That's where it started.
We're looking at each other from the other side of the stage. Somebody thought about that. I mean, you're right, and
exactly.
It's so funny you talking about this, and I can even give you a simple example that you talked about. We have the power of thinking and choosing, right? Well, we choose what we eat, right? I mean, you have ability to select. I don't want to eat this. I want to eat. We choose what we wear. We choose where we go, and those are conscious, decisions. And it's the same way. You just have to choose how you want to think. Where I want to be, whether I want to be miserable or happy. Exactly. That is the truth. It is the same thing. By the way, the menus, whatever you're looking at, is the same thing. It's right. One may be physical, the other one is in your mind. But at the end of the day, it's projection. You got to see where you are, and that's it. If you think you are really not happy, I mean, it happens in relationships. You are in a bad relationship, and it's wrong, but yet you're not willing to make a difference to change it. And I was like, and many people are in that trap, and only when it's too late, when it gets too extreme, then they realize like, what have I done? I've lost all these years. I mean, we all can make those, and it's time you see it. Like we say, see something, say something. Here, see something, do something about it.
Right, exactly.
So
that we have a choice. And you're right, Hurricane. I mean, it's funny because I bring that example up myself, that we make decisions for ourselves all the time. And something like food and clothes is actually really good to point out, because if you don't want to eat something or you don't like something, you're like, no, I don't want to eat that. I don't want that. Why can't you apply the same concept to your thoughts? I don't like that thought. That's one of my says who questions. Do I like this thought? If you don't like it, change it to one that you like.
Love it. Well, today we're going to make sure that people start changing, their thoughts. And you know what? I think they can. Folks, you're watching, you're listening. What we said right now is not rocket science. It's very simple process. Just apply exactly what you heard today. And there's a good chance, I can guarantee it, if you did it exactly how it was said right now, and you apply it with true intention, you will see the result. No one can vibe this one out. You can do this.
Exactly. Try it. That's what I say, Hurricane. Try it.
What do you got to lose?
Nothing to lose. Try and see the effect it has on you. See what a negative thought feels like for you, and then change it to its positive counterpart, and you're going to feel it different in your body.
Well, I can tell you right now, you and I having this discussion, I'm all excited just by talking about it. I mean, literally, I'm just, this is just who I am, but really this stuff gets me going because I feel that vibe. I feel the energy. I feel the positivity, and I know it can be done. That's the thing with me. Like, you're listening, you're watching, you can do this. You can change. And if maybe not you, maybe you're good, but help someone else change by giving them the vibe, give them the energy level. You can exchange that. That's easy. We're doing it right now. You're probably getting excited as well by listening right now. And maybe this can be that moment of change for you. But you
Right.
can do this.
Right.
So Aura, there was a question. The new book. So Miss, the name of the book,
Mindfulness and mysticism.
mysticism. Would you kindly just define to our audiences what that means in I guess in lame terms or in easy terms to understand it, differently in terms
Yeah.
of practice?
Well, as a mindfulness practitioner and author, I have written books on mindfulness, which is, as I said, the practice of being in the present moment with total awareness. And when we're more present, we see more, we feel more, we hear more. Our senses are very heightened. Okay. And when we're more present, because we can experience more, we can have different states of awareness and even different states of consciousness, meaning it can take us to some pretty high places, And that was interesting for me, why I wanted to couple mindfulness with mysticism. Mysticism is something that a lot of people are not familiar with. They're like, what's that? That sounds so esoteric or metaphysical. What does that even mean? No, I wanted to demystify mysticism. I wanted to bring it into the 21st century and say mysticism is an experience. Evelyn Underhill, the mystic that I cite in the book, she says it's being in union with reality. Well, what's reality for you? What's reality for me? I interpret that as being at one with all that exists. And when we really don't feel separateness or separation, and we feel more at one with the universe, if you will, we start to experience the universe in very special ways, and it can feel very magical, even mystical. And I've asked that question to many people. I said, have you ever had a time in your life, an experience in your life that felt very special, like maybe you couldn't even put into words? It was a very, a type of feeling that felt just more than ordinary. It maybe felt, again, it could feel, I say words like divine and holy and sacred. And a lot of the times, Hurricane, people use those words in more religious contexts. People can have a divine experience when they connect to something like religion. I didn't want to write a book on religion, although people can experience however they want to experience it. But I wanted to take that feeling that people have when they feel this exalted feeling and say we can all feel that way.
Well, you're right. And it's funny because we are part of the universe. And as a matter of fact, when you talk physics and even quantum physics, we are just made of energy.
Yeah.
We are made of energy, the same, elements of, the stars and everything out there.
Our physicist, cosmologist, Carl Sagan said we are made of star stuff.
We are, stardust.
Stardust, yes.
We are quarks and ions and, you name it, we're there.
Exactly.
But again, we look at the word in the physical aspect. Sometimes we kind of not connect with the mystical or the actual piece of where we really, because in ancient Greek mythology, you have that, the concept of the ghost in the machine. Somebody's running this. This is the avatar. And actually, I do believe that this is the avatar, and there's another being controlling this avatar, and that's actually your soul, as we can refer it, in common words in religion, and some people, or your spirit, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But then that's also who is interpreting, who's actually working those thoughts of yours. So those synapses that are firing up in the brain, I mean, they're being controlled. So there's a lot of stuff, but sometimes things happen. To your point, we get to that level, where like, whoa, I am a certain, like I'm just over all this. I'm like beyond this. But you can get to those levels, as even it just being so positive. Sometimes that is in itself a manifestation, because
right,
you are tapping into those resources that most people are not yet. But anyone can.
Anybody can, and we, if you think about it, we live most of our waking time very survival oriented. We're it's more of on an animalistic level. We're thinking about how we're going to survive, how we're going to pay the rent, how we're going to work our job, how we're going to make ends meet. So it's more on that level that we function from. when we have the spirit, and as French philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin said, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So what we don't pay much attention to is the spirit, and that always seems like that's of the spiritual. And unless someone's really inclined to follow the needs of their spirit, which I think is really what breathes life into our body, we live life mostly on that level of day in, day out survival. And it's unfortunate because if you're so survival oriented all the time, and even for people that don't have to be, some people really have to work hard to put food on the table. And there are some people that have plenty to go around and they still want more. They want more success and more success and more success. You're not really feeding the spirit. How are you really feeding your spirit? And how are you really connecting to what I've called the mystical experience, where you are connecting to something that feels more holy, divine, or sacred, and that really holds meaning for you in your life? I think that that's something to pay attention to, because we can get very caught up in just materialism all the time at the expense of not feeding the spirit.
Well, it's funny you said that, because I think one of the biggest problems that we have as humanity today is that we are caught up in the material world. And because of that, it creates a need for us to be stuck in situations like, work or something you don't like to do, but you do it anyways, and it makes you sad and then depressed, and then you can hurt yourself and hurt your family. And, I have a very simple rule. I don't guarantee tomorrow. The past is past. Today is a good day, and I'm going to live this to the fullest and happy. And you know what? Nothing's going to stress me out. I have no control over tomorrow. Like I walk in,
Right.
to the work, oh, this happened to me a few years back. I come from vacation. I show up and I get a call. We shutting down the company. Bye. Everybody's gone. Didn't phase me. I started a company the next day. So the thing is, and again, I'm giving an example, but you don't have to start a company. That's just an example. I had no choice. I did it that way, and depends on what you have. Sometimes people say, "Well, I don't have the money." There's ways to do businesses without having too much money. But the fact is, you just have to live, the moment in a way. Without, you don't disconnect from everything. But the idea is that, what is the worst that can happen to me today, or what is the worst that can ever happen to me? The worst that can happen is if I lose my health, I lose my life.
Right.
Money can be made. People drop zero money and they come back. Most of the success stories will probably tell you that they've had some bad days. Okay?
Right.
That's not the issue. But again, when we connect it to the world, to the material, and everything is all about what's going on around us, and then we're caught into it and we can get out of it. But if you can just dispose of that, and just use that as just a means, and it's part of life, whatever, you use it, and just lose it if you have to. But and then you can switch things. I mean, we do this again. Clothing. You don't like your stuff, you change it, you get something else.
Right.
You can turn your life any given day.
Right.
And it's never too late. Every day is a new opportunity. You wake up, hey, fresh day, let's do this.
I know. But you're talking about, again, that's the igniting of the spirit, and nobody can take that away from us. That's our soul. That's what breathes life again into our bodies, and when you're somebody who doesn't over-identify with, you lose your business. Like you said, you get this news and then you think that's who you are. Well, if I'm my business, if I'm my job, if I'm my identity, if I'm my persona, and it stops and it's taken away from me, then who am I? And a lot of people do collapse and they do implode because they think that's their self-worth. I know that is important. I get that, especially if you've worked hard to achieve what you have. But you have to be malleable, and you have to be somebody who's saying, well, this isn't going to, that saying is not going to kill your spirit. Your spirit rises again and then attempts to do something else. That nobody can bring that down. Nobody can stop you from doing that. Do you know that you have this invincibility to you that can keep going on? Do you know? And that's why I really talk about these energies, that we really connect, we align ourselves with these energies that really guide us on the life journey.
Or I can tell you, this was a journey today. We, you got us to the better selves, and I think just by being here, by listening to this, it's just that almost a super recharge. At least for me, I know I got super recharged again, so that keeps me. Tomorrow is going to be even a more better day. But I think everybody that can watch or listen to this, you see the vibe. This is exactly how it is. You got this. You can turn this around any given day. The only thing that can stop you is you, and you know what? You can. So therefore, don't worry about it. Just do it. Make it happen.
Exactly.
And so before, I know we've passed the hour mark here, and just one question. I know you have some tips in the new book. Can you just maybe give us a couple of them, just to kind of point us as we end in the show?
Yeah. A really great way to start a mindfulness practice is really to just tell yourself that you want to be more present in your life, to show up for the moments of your life, being really present, like be there, like really be here, I should say, 100%. And if your mind starts to wander, which it will, it might go to the past and maybe wish something had been different, or it might anticipate the future with anxiety and concern and worry. Know that the past has come and gone and the future isn't here yet. But the moment that is most real is the moment that we are alive in right now. So what can you do with this moment right now? How can you make this moment the best moment of your life?
And that's it. I'm not going to add anything. Those are powerful words, and we're going to keep it at that. All right. I will have the link to the book and your site to the description of the show, so people can actually link to you and potentially, get the book. And certainly, people can certainly reach out to you, right, and get services and register.
Yes, they can go to auranadrich.com, which is my website. And I might add, since you're on the East Coast, I'm doing a workshop in upstate New York at the Omega Center in October, from October 23rd to the 28th, on creativity and mysticism. And I'm going to be doing it with a colleague of mine, Dr. Ron Alexander, who has a book that just came out on core creativity. So for those of you on the East Coast, come on down.
Well, listen, East Coast, West Coast, North, West, South.
Wherever you are on the planet.
They'll travel in. This is powerful stuff. And,
Exactly.
Listen, I know people sometimes look for these opportunities to enhance their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, listen, we're gonna announce that, and as a matter of fact, I can get that information, I can also post it up, so we can share that with people, and hopefully we get some folks out there and get them excited. That's the way it is.
Thank you, Hurricane, for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, folks. I hope you enjoyed this today's show, and it's a lot of positivity here. So it's plenty to work with. So that being said, we'll be talking soon. New day, new show, new guest, new topic. Bye for now.